This is Equip and Engage, a podcast by Subsplash, exploring how ministry, technology, and innovation come together to equip churches around the world to engage their communities.
Hello, welcome to Equip and Engage. I'm Chris, part of the team here at Subsplash, and for the next couple of weeks, I'm walking us through a new series called See the Good. We're interviewing pastors and leaders and others just to learn how they are seeing the good in their surroundings and their communities in the midst of some really crazy circumstances around the world. And today, I have my guests, Henry and Alex Seeley. Welcome, you two.
It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, so glad to have you two. I mean, before we jump in and just hear what you're seeing around you these days, I'd love to hear a little bit about the two of you and the community that you're a part of. Tell us your story.
Sure. We are here in Nashville, Tennessee, and we've moved here in 2012 from Australia, and we started a church here called the Belonging Co. In early 2014 is when our church officially launched, and we've been living our best life these last few years, and just loving everything that God's doing here in Nashville. Just honored to be a part of the greater landscape of the church here in our city.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. It's definitely not a Southern accent we're hearing, so thank you for clarifying.
It's one from
it
the
is
very
South
south,
Australian, but not Southern American.
below the equator.
That is fair. Nice. Well, great. So glad to have you two. So nice to meet you also. Would just love to hear even your stories and your perspectives around this topic. Where are you seeing the good in the community that you're a part of right now?
Well, I think we've been saying that it's the irony that social distancing has actually brought people closer together. And I know that in our church community, people have felt more connected than ever before. And so it's a blessing in disguise, even though it's not the ideal situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, people have had to be incredibly intentional in this season to stay engaged and connected with one another. And I think, when you're forced into some of these situations, you quickly realize the areas of life that you've maybe taken for granted, and even the people that you've taken for granted, the relationships that you've maybe taken for granted, even, for many people, just taking church for granted, that, and not in a bad way, but the fact that we've been able to meet every week, around the country up until this point, you just get used to that. You get familiar with that. And I think in this season, as much as it's, there's been some heartbreak for people and people, losing loved ones, people being sick, people losing jobs. The flip side of that is the intentionality of people engaging with the ones that they love and engaging with community around them. And, we've seen it in our church, obviously, like many churches have, we've discovered the Zoom platform in a very real way.
For sure.
Even in this moment. And, just being able to take our connect groups online, through a medium like that. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. Like, thank God that we're walking through this season with the technology that we do, because it's enabled us to stay, connected in a way that we maybe wouldn't have been able to do 10 or 15 years ago. And so I think just those things, seeing people and really watching the church flourish in this time, I feel like, we've had greater connect group attendance online than what we would have in person. And I think that's a huge, huge win right now. And so, we've just been doing our best to navigate this season.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think you're absolutely right to talk about it along the lines of intention. I know I've seen that too, just from my own perspective, where it somehow feels as if I'm connecting with people more than I even normally would, because you have to. If you don't actually put intention behind it, you're going to be alone for who knows how many months on end, right?
That's right.
Yeah. It's really crazy. So I'm glad that you guys are seeing the good in that too. That's just awesome to still have community connected.
Yeah.
Well, how do you think you're seeing your community adapt to this, and how are you sort of changing for the better in the midst of everything?
Yeah. This is a conversation that we've had even with our staff. I think a lot of people are, they're saying, when can we get back to normal? When can we get back to the way things used to be? But I don't think we're ever really going to go back to the way things used to be. And I think it's a really important season for not just us as a church staff, but really, for believers in general. We have an incredible opportunity to really dig in for what the future has. And even in regards to church life and the gospel, like, are we just going to go back to the same busyness and the same patterns and the same way that we did things in the past? Or are we going to use this opportunity to really dig in and find out how we can be, more creative and more intentional and more engaged with people? And I know, there's a lot of churches that obviously we're sad that they're not able to meet for Easter recently, but and as we were, but also, as a church, we had an incredible opportunity to reach people in a way that we just have never had at
Yep.
that level before. So we had, a massive amount of people stream church on that Easter weekend
Oh, I'm sure.
in a way that, we wouldn't have seen that on a regular weekend. We wouldn't have seen that with, people in a physical location. And so I think, it's kind of grabbing hold of the good elements, seeing the best things out of obviously a heartbreaking situation for so
Yeah,
many people, but also realizing that we have a great opportunity to dig in and find out how we can adapt and move forward. And I think, just even rethinking how we present church, how we present our week, midweek meetings, engagement with our church. What does that look like? Does it necessarily mean that we have to have people in a physical location every
mhm,
time we want to do this, or can we think outside of that box, and how do we best do that? And so there's some of the conversations that we've been having, with our team and our staff.
yeah, that's really good. It's impossible to measure, I'm sure, but I'm thinking it might be the case that this Easter of this year, more people heard the gospel on one
Yeah,
particular day than ever before in history, and who knows,
yeah,
maybe ever
Yeah.
in the years to come. Isn't that crazy to think about?
yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually talking with someone this morning who runs a Christian TV network, and there was an event that they normally do here in Nashville at one of the large arenas, and that venue maxes out at 15,000 people.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, they couldn't do that event, and so they streamed it online, and they ended up having over 1 million people watch
Oh
that
my.
event. And it was crazy. The same person was telling me that they were speaking with an evangelist recently who has seen in the last 2 months just online through different mediums, presenting the gospel, over 40,000 decisions for Christ. And this
Wow.
evangelist was saying, I wouldn't have even been able to speak face to face to that many people and see that many decisions probably in a year or two. And yet that's
Yeah.
happened in just a couple of months because of this medium. And so, it's a really exciting opportunity, I think, for the church to, dig into some of these things.
Totally. I totally agree. Alex, anything you'd want to add to that? You seeing some of the same exciting opportunity there?
Yeah, I think it's just been an incredible, like the same with me with just doing Instagram lives
Yeah,
where
Oh yeah.
normally I would do fun things.
sure.
I was intentional to teach on the Holy Spirit, a topic that people who aren't from our church were so hungry to hear. And, in 1 week, saw about 22,000 people
Mm.
drive through my Instagram to
Yep.
listen to what, we had to say. And I never would have had that audience
Yeah.
before. And so I think it really is a window that we need to take note and be very intentional with at the moment.
Yeah, that's incredible. I totally agree. You're both sort of alluding to this, but I'm wondering what you think might be the long-term positive impacts of all this, and particularly the way that you're, responding
Yeah,
and pivoting and all this. What do you think about 6 months, a year, five
yeah.
years from now, et cetera?
I mean, none of us know what this is going to look like in a week or 6 months or a year, just from a restrictions point
Yeah.
of view. But I've just been saying, and I've been honestly really proud of our team during this season, because I feel like our team have just been they've just been so up for the challenge of like, all right, we don't know what this is going to look like even in a week's time or 2 weeks time. And
Yep.
so let's just dig in and see what we can do. Let's see, how we can just remain flexible. So we're going to plan for the best, and we're going to have a plan B for the worst, and then
Yeah.
somehow we're going to form, something in the middle of that. But it's been, this is what's been really beautiful, I think, in this season. We've been trying to still present church, some of our church services in a way that's still familiar, to keep
Sure.
some, just some routine in people's lives and keep some things that are familiar. And just watching our worship team, we've tried to lead worship as many times as we can in the venue that we're in for church on a week to week basis, just to have that sense of familiarity for
Yep.
people. And worship's a huge part of who we are as a church, and I want to do our best to keep that at the same level, if not at a greater level than what we have. And showing up and just being there as our team have been leading worship to essentially an empty room,
Yeah.
aside from a few production people. But at the same time, the same presence of God you can sense it tangibly in the room.
Yep.
And this is what I love about God.
Right.
God's not dependent on a big crowd. We don't need big crowds to
Hmm.
feel the presence of God or to have a significant encounter with God. You know, there was nobody in the room, and yet the presence of God is filling that place. And somehow,
Yep.
as people are watching that a week or two later, you sense that same feeling. God's he's not unaware of what's happening. He knows the words that need to be spoken over people and the songs that need to be
Yes.
sung over people, and those right moments that people are going to engage that. And so I think in all this craziness, having a level of trust that none of this is taking God by surprise. And so even if we don't have a plan formulated for the next 6 months or the next year, he's still in control in this.
Yeah.
And so I think we've really just been trying to stay in that place of saying, God, where are you leading us during this? How can we really dig into you? Aside from all the technicalities and the issues at hand,
Yep.
how can we dig into knowing you in a deeper way? This is what we've been encouraging our church. Don't waste this time. Let's dig
For
into
sure.
a deeper place with God. And so from that, I think we're going to have to, some of this, we're just going to have to navigate as we go and see, what continues to work. Are people still going to engage in Zoom, on Zoom in 6 months' time? Are they going to be worn out by that platform?
Sure. Good
And if
question.
that is the case, how do we still, maintain engagement with people online? And so I don't want to put our eggs all in one basket if it's going to look exactly like this. I think we're just
Yeah.
going to have to keep seeing, what it looks like from month to month.
Yeah, that's right. You're both asking some really good questions in there. And I particularly am encouraged just to hear how you're sort of walking that line between needing to change things up. So you're obviously adapting and innovating along the way, but wanting to provide some sort of continuity, something familiar as well.
Yeah.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of people out there in the church space, a lot of pastors like the both of you, are trying to figure out how to do that exact same thing. And it's hard, isn't it?
It is very hard. And I don't think there's one size fits all kind of solution. I think
Right.
everybody's just figuring this out the best that they can, and
Yeah.
doing a wonderful job too. Honestly, it's been great to have some time to be able to just stream in and be inspired and encouraged by other churches
Yeah.
around the country and around the world, and seeing how people are doing it. And it's been a real joy to watch even some of our friends. I think where they've wrestled with some of these areas in the past, they've really stepped into something beautiful
Yeah.
and powerful in this season. And I think it's just, I'm excited for where the church is at. It's really, forced us to step into some new areas for many people. And I think it's been encouraging to see how the church is buoyant and survive, not just surviving, but really thriving during this time.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'd love to hear even from you two personally, just as we wrap up here, like what's one way that you've personally innovated or changed things up in this season that you're seeing a real benefit from? Alex, I think about you approaching your Instagram stories in a different way, maybe more about that or something else that you're both doing a little bit differently than normal.
Yeah, I feel like Bible study has been something that has evolved
Yeah.
out of
Yeah.
this, and I'm going to continue it as we go back, but it will still have a twofold prong. It will be in present with one another, but also streaming.
Yep.
I think the training and teaching, like I've thought about developing a like online training for certain things,
Yeah. Awesome.
and just being able to be more proactive in actually getting some content recorded so that it could actually have a further greater reach. And I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, for me, we're reassessing everything that we do in some regard, as far as the way that we present church,
Yep.
and what that looks like, and what it's going to look like as we move forward. Are we just going to continue with the model of streaming our local service, or are we going to, start to consider our online campus, as really its own campus, even though some of the content will come from what's happening live in the room? How do we
Yep.
best, kind of have a hybrid scenario from that regard? And so we're just having all of those conversations right now. And I get excited with things like this, even though
Sure.
6 weeks of being stuck at home for a lot of people is pretty hard right now.
Yeah.
And it's been a few days for us where we're like, oh, this needs to be
Yeah.
over.
I know.
But I just get excited when we have to get out of the routine and the rut of life and just dig into to find that next thing. So
Yeah.
that's where we're at right now.
That's good. Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your perspectives in this middle of all this craziness. I'm really encouraged by it just personally and love what you're both up to. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I also just want to thank everyone for checking out Equip and Engage and following along with our See the Good series here. We'll be back with more conversations just like this, hearing from other really awesome and inspiring leaders like Henry and Alex to see how they are adapting and changing and seeing really positive change in their surroundings in the midst of some crazy circumstances. So thank you, Henry, Alex. Thanks everyone for checking out Equip and Engage, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Equip and Engage, where we're sharing insights learned from thousands of conversations with leaders and pastors around the world. To follow along with these conversations, subscribe today or visit our website.